This is the first webinar organized by the Green Deal Data Space, the great project. I really welcome all of you. And I think that today we are covering an amazing topic because we are bringing together the evolution of the data economy, and in particular, the instrument of the data spaces that probably most of you know quite well. And we are bringing that together with the development of the Green Deal policies that you know are very important because basically they will face challenges like climate change. So data economy and Green Deal together seems really like a very interesting topic for today. And I really like this data space in particular because normally we tend to talk a lot about economic growth and which are the business models that will allow companies to get more money. And here we also aim to achieve more money and economic growth, but this is really a topic where we will bring together not only the economic benefits, but also all the benefits that have to do with society and with environment. So what you will get today, you will get an introduction to the Green Deal data space, the great project, so you will understand what it is. You will understand why this is important and how you can engage with the community. The Green Deal data space has been already present in a lot of events, in a lot of webinars, but this is the first one we organize for our own community. And we really hope that with the contents that we will present today, we will manage to engage you and to make you part of our community and ecosystem building. So first of all, let me tell you about who will be today with us. We will have Johan Bodenkamp from the European Commission presenting the Green Deal data space from the Commission point of view. Then we will go directly to my colleague Nevena Raczko, who is senior consultant at IDC. She will make a project presentation so that you have the general view of the project, what we aim to achieve, what is the timeline, so that you can really get a very good overview of what GREAT is going to do. And then we will jump directly into a very interesting discussion where we will have several panelists. And you can see there the different organizations that will be represented in the panel, people that have knowledge on data, but also people that have a lot of knowledge on the different communities that are part of what we call the Green Deal. And I will let Veronica introduce the speakers later on in the session. My name is Nuria de Lama. I'm also senior consultant at IDC Government Consulting, and I will be guiding you through the webinar. I will be your moderator, and I hope that we will have a lot of questions and answers, because the idea today is that you really capture a lot of information that will be provided by my colleagues, but we also want to give the opportunity to the community to make questions, answers, to clarify things, and basically to feel attracted to this topic and help us co-create the Green Deal data space. Some housekeeping rules. First of all is that you are all muted. Please keep your camera off unless you are talking. If you want to make questions and answers, and I told you before that we don't want this to be just a monologue, we would really like you to participate. You have two possibilities. You can use the chat to share messages with all the people, and we really encourage to do that because I think that this will make the discussion more dynamic. But then if you have questions to our colleagues presenting later on, please use the question and answer feature, and we will really guide you through the answers. If there is time to go through all the questions, we will do that directly after the presentations or after the panel. If there is no time for that, still give us your contact details and we will come back to you, or we will provide the answers to the questions and answers through the website or any other means that the project has to communicate to the partners. And then just for your information, the webinar will be recorded and it will be posted in our communication channel. So you don't need to take picture or to take note of everything that will be said here, because you will have the possibility to rewatch it again, or also to check some of the presentations that will be shared today. So these are very important things before we start. Let me go again through the agenda so that you get an idea of how is the setting for today, and you can also maybe select the parts that are more important for you. We will have this presentation by Johan, the European Commission, just after my short introduction. Then my colleague Nevena will make the overall presentation of the project. I've gone through the slides and it's a very comprehensive view of everything we plan to do and how we plan to do it, because I think it's so important not only to tackle the what, but also the how. And then, as mentioned, Veronica will go directly through the panel discussion where we will really run through a lot of questions and interesting topics related to the co-building of the data space, in particular for the Green Deal aspect. We have reserved a bit of time for the questions and answers, but again, I think that it is important that if you have a quick question or you want to clarify something, you put this either through the chat or the question and answer option, and we will go through that after the presentations. And I imagine that in any case, most of them will come directly after the panel discussion. So without further delay, because I don't want to steal the time of my colleagues that will really provide the content here, I would like to introduce Johan Bodenkamp. He is the Policy Officer and Program Officer at the European Commission, DG Connect, and is our counterpart at the European Commission for the Development of the Green Deal Data Space. Johan, first of all, thank you very much to be here with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nuria, and I'm very happy to be here with you. I hope you can hear me. If not, give me a sign. So indeed, my name is Johan Bodenkamp, working at the Commission DG Connect, and in our unit, we are focusing on data and data policy, data projects, anything that has to do with data and boosting the use of data and the sharing of data. So indeed, I am the project officer from the Commission side of this great project, because GREAT is indeed a very special endeavor to gradually develop this Green Deal data space, a common European data space for the Green Deal. I will give a brief EC policy perspective to allow you to see where the Green Deal data space and GREAT more in particular fits into. And then, of course, afterwards, we will have a lot of more interesting information on the GREAT project itself by Nevena. Next slide, please. So you see here on this slide the so-called 6 top priorities of this Commission's mandate that is ending next year. And you can see that 2 of the 6 are directly affected, let's say, by the Green Deal data space and by the GREAT project. That is to say, the GREAT project is concretely contributing to 2 of the 6 top priorities. So we speak about the so-called twin green and digital transition that is really at the heart of a lot of initiatives of the European Commission, and therefore I thought it was really important to underline that this is not just another project that is trying to do something interesting, but that this project is really trying to contribute concretely to these 2 very important priorities of the Commission's mandate. Next slide, please. So first of all, the Green Deal, you all have heard of it. It's a very, very important and ambitious policy field. It is really a roadmap in making the EU's economy sustainable. We really have to fight climate change. We really have to do things profoundly differently. We all know it. We hear it on the news every day, and it's a bit scary, to be honest. So it is a very, very important policy action plan from the Commission together with all the member states to really make our economy sustainable. So it means that it is one of the key components of the EU's growth strategy, because we are always trying to favor growth, economic growth, and to make our societies better. And at the same time, a path to a green, robust, and durable recovery from this terrible health pandemic that we have just lived through and we're still coming out to, and the terrible economic impact that it has had. Next slide, please. And this is one of the top objectives that you know. In less than 27 years, we should become climate neutral as the first continent. The 27 member states have agreed to this very, very ambitious and very important objective. So everything is evolving around making us climate neutral in less than 27 years. Next slide, please. Now, this means, of course, that the European Green Deal is touching upon any kind of policy, any kind of economic field, any kind of sector that we know. Of course, you know, environment-related aspects, climate change-related aspects are in all our human activities. And this is what makes the European Green Deal so important and at the same time so ambitious and let's say difficult as well, right? Because in all our policies, we need to take into account this environment related aspect. So you see here just let's say an array of important sectors and policy fields. You see, for example, the whole food chain has to be reseen, agriculture with the farm to fork strategy, of course, directly protecting nature with biodiversity, the whole whole energy transition, everything that is linked to smarter mobility, to go from one place to the other in a climate, let's say, neutral way, everything that has to relate it with industry changes. So the European Green Deal really is a transversal, important policy activity that needs, where we really need to do things very differently and very, very soon in order to reach this objective of climate neutrality by 2050. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the other important priority, which is a Europe fit for the digital age, because of course, the great project and the Green Deal data space is about digital for the Green Deal. So, of course, the digital strategy has a lot of various aspects in order to make the best out of digital tools for European citizens, for the companies. And for example, you have maybe heard about the Digital Decade Policy Program that is really focusing very specifically and concretely with targets for 2030 in 4 important fields like skills, infrastructures, e-governance, e-government services, and businesses. And next slide, please. If we go more specifically to the data related field, then of course I have to speak about the European data strategy, the one that was presented in February 2020, because there we have formulated the vision to gradually create a European single market for data. That is to say, a European single market where data can really flow freely between sectors, between countries, and where data will have this liberty of movement, like we know the liberty of movement in the actual current single market for persons, goods, capital, and services. So we want to do this the European way. We want to use and reuse data the European way, so in full respect of European values. And it means that we need to have clear rules. How can you access data? Under what conditions can you use it and reuse it? And we hope that with this data strategy, we will be able to unlock this huge potential of data that we have. We produce data in huge amounts every day, industrial data, personal, non-personal data, you name it, and there is so much that can be done in a good way with the use of those data. So next slide, please. So this European data strategy is basically focusing since, let's say, 3 years or 2.5 years on 2 main elements. On the one hand, it is trying to create a cross-sectoral legislative framework completing existing already data-related legislation, so a horizontal framework in order to clarify under what conditions you can use and reuse data. So more specifically, the Data Governance Act that was adopted in July of last year and will become applicable in September. The Data Act, of which a proposal is currently discussed by the Parliament and Council. And then very recently, finally, we had the publication of the Implementing Act on High-Value Data Sets as part of the Open Data Directive. So that is one important part of the data strategy. The other important part is the creation and the development of these so-called common European data spaces. And European Council is very interested in this concept and in developing quickly these so-called common European data spaces. And you will find there's a link in the slides that you will have available, a staff working document that more specifically explains what are the data spaces that we are creating and what are the various steps for the different kinds of data spaces in important sectors. Next slide, please. So just one full slide with this, let's say, legislative side. You see on the left-hand side the various European laws, if I may say so, and all of them try to focus on a specific aspects of data sharing, of data accessibility. So the Data Act that is currently being negotiated is more focusing on ensuring fairness in the allocation of data value among the actors of the data economy. The Data Governance Act, again, that will be applicable in September, in a few months only, is more focusing on ensuring trust in data transactions by the creation, for example, of neutral data intermediaries, or by creating a framework for data altruism organizations. I will not go into the details. I just wanted to show you very, let's say quickly, an overview of the important data-related acts that are to create this comprehensive horizontal legislative framework. And then you see at the very bottom that, of course, according to specific sectors and specific sectoral needs, on top of that, there can be vertical legislation to address a specific aspect of a sector. Next slide, please. And then the other part, the European data spaces. Again, I refer you to the staff working document that gives a lot of detailed information, and that will be updated in the course of this year with a new edition. But what does it mean? We try to make the use and the accessibility and the reuse of data more easy by overcoming legal and technical barriers to data sharing. So a European data space is to bring together, on the one hand, the relevant data infrastructure that allows you to find data and to reuse it, and at the other side, to have a comprehensive data governance framework that allows you to understand exactly under what conditions and rules you can use data. Next slide, please. So here you find key characteristics of what is a data space in general. So again, first, a secure and privacy-preserving IT infrastructure. On top of that, a well-functioning data governance mechanism, that is to say, the whole set of rules that allows you to access, process, use, and share data in a trustful way. In a data space, it is the data holders that are in control. They can decide who can have access to their data, for which purpose, and under which conditions, the European way. Then, of course, a data space will have vast amounts of data that are made available, and they are made available on a voluntary basis under certain conditions that can be against your remuneration, for free, data donation, for example. It can be anything. And finally, a data space should be open. That is to say, organizations and individuals that want to participate could enter the data space. Next slide, please. So here you find some important data space actors and a link to the GREAT project that you see the logo on the right-hand side. First of all, we have created recently a data spaces support center in October of last year. That is an important supporting center that coordinates relevant actions to develop and support the sectoral data spaces that are going to be created, with a blueprint, with best practices, with knowledge transfer, etc. At the same time, under the Digital Europe program, a certain number of coordination and support actions have started for specific sectoral or domain-specific data spaces. And here, of course, for the Green Deal data space as an important domain, we have the GREAT project, for which you will hear a lot more in a few minutes. And then next to that, of course, for agriculture, manufacturing, etc. And then, as part of the Data Governance Act, soon in September, there will be a consultative and advisory body that is called the European Data Innovation Board that is going also to work together with the Data Spaces Support Center in providing guidelines for interoperability of those common European data spaces. Because, of course, all those data spaces will need to be interconnected so that we gradually arrive at this vision of a single European market for data. And my last slide, I think, yes, is just an overview where you see again very clearly the Green Deal with GREAT. So you see on the top a certain number of sectors for which data spaces are created at European level. First started in the European Data Strategy, and others have been added. That's why we have the pluses, like, for example, a data space in the field of tourism. You have media, for example, and very clearly present from the beginning is, of course, the Green Deal. In the middle, the Data Spaces Support Center. At the bottom, some elements of the technical infrastructure that has to be made available in order to make a European data space work. So to conclude, all these activities to create European data spaces as part of the greater vision to come to a European single data market, and specifically for the Green Deal, to make data available in achieving the objectives of the European Green Deal. That is all what the European Green Deal data space and specifically the Great Coordination Support Action is about. I will stop here. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions now or later, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johan. I'm checking now the chat and the questions and answers. I saw that some of my colleagues were already replying to some of the questions. I don't know if you want to take this one, which is the only one that I see at this very moment. What are the links and the synergies specifically between GREAT as a project and Simple, the Simple infrastructure also funded by the Digital Europe program?
Yes, so if you can go one slide up, Alba, I can give you a short explanation. So indeed, thank you very much for the question. So Simple is, yeah, thank you very much. So you see at the bottom, the technical infrastructure for data spaces, and the second one is smart middleware solutions. So the idea is for the Commission to procure a smart middleware solution that can be very beneficial for the various European data spaces in order to interconnect them and also within a data space to provide certain connections. So this smart middleware that is currently going to be procured by the European Commission is called Simple. And the publication of this procurement is just out since a few days. So if you would go on TED, Tenders Electronic Daily, or I can provide a link, you will see exactly the procurement documents. So the idea is that the Commission procures this smart middleware as a very important building block in the technical infrastructure for data spaces, but also to interconnect the various data spaces to come gradually at this European digital data single market story.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. I see that people are getting very excited about the topic, so you have some additional questions. I will go quickly through them, and then let's see where we arrive. So can you say anything about this innovation board? What or which roles will be part of this one?
Yes, so the European Data Innovation Board is part of the Data Governance Act. If you would go to this act, you will see a chapter dedicated to the European Digital Innovation Board. So it is an expert group, a Commission expert group that will be set up, that is currently going to be set up and will be in place by September of this year. And there will be representatives of all the member states for specific elements that are dealt with in the Data Governance Act. For example, the member states, they will need to appoint specific bodies that are dealing with the setting up and the registration of the neutral data intermediaries, for example, or the data donation altruism organizations. At the same time, a specific task of this European innovation EDIP, this European EDIP, European Data Innovation Board, sorry, is to provide guidelines and help with the setup of the European data spaces, specifically also from an interoperability and a standard point of view. So this expert group will be working with the Data Spaces Support Center. The Data Spaces Support Center, we say, is like will be the operational arm of EDIP, and together they will be working in providing these guidelines and working on interoperability so that we do not create all sorts of silos, but that really we have interconnected European data spaces that gradually will create this single data market.
Mm-hmm. Johan, I will go through two of them that are very quick ones, and then we jump directly to the presentation so that we are aware of the time we have today. So one is about the contacts and the domains of these vertical CSAs. I understand that in the website of the Data Space Support Center, all the CSAs are listed and all the vertical sectors are listed. I don't know if the contact details are included. Maybe you can say something else about that.
Yeah, sorry, I don't think that there are contact details, but of course we can provide them. If you would simply type Data Spaces Support Center, you will get there immediately. I mean, they've done that very, very well. And indeed, you will find various activities that are currently already being undertaken together with these CSAs to help the development of the various sectoral data spaces. For example, a very interesting document that you can look at if you are interested is a so-called starter kit with important basic building blocks that would need to be worked on if you would like to develop a data space. And this is done together in cooperation with these different CSAs. So with GREAT for the Green Deal, maybe Nevena can also say a word about that. I mean, GREAT as a project is in close contact with the Data Spaces Support Center in order, on the one hand, to make sure that they take into account what will be developed and made available by the Data Spaces Support Center, and on the other hand, to make sure that the particular features and maybe challenges of the Green Deal data space, specifically, let's say this transversal nature, which is very particular of the Green Deal and a difficult one, that this is taken into account as well on the global Data Spaces Support Center side.
In fact, I can anticipate the colleagues attending the webinar today that there is also a glossary where people can find the major terms of the data spaces. And today, I think that they are releasing a new, still internal version of the glossary. So because there is one already in the starter kit that you have mentioned, but I think that today, at least for the people involved in the projects, they have distributed a new version of the glossary. So I ask people to stay tuned. I think there's another one. I go very quickly through that and then we jump to the presentation. It's more about the relationship between the vertical data spaces. Johan, I understand that you are precisely promoting this collaboration with the Data Space Support Center and the other data spaces to ensure that all of us are working towards the interoperability between the different data spaces and we don't work in silos, even though, of course, we are focusing on the specific verticals.
Absolutely. I think you really summarized it very well. The idea is really that that all these verticals, data spaces work hand in hand and go in the same direction, because we have to keep in mind the ultimate objective. The ultimate objective is really to get to this so-called single data market. We don't want 100 data spaces as an end result. We want that the data spaces all together will in the end, form this so-called internal market for data. And the data spaces is a way to get there. So it's an endeavor of several years. It will be a lot of work. But of course, from the outset, these data spaces will have to, work together, make sure that they are interoperable, so that they create this network, if I may say so, of data spaces to come to one single European data space, that is to say, this single European data market.
Perfect. I see more questions. For the sake of time, I suggest that we go directly to the project presentation, because many of these questions will be answered through the panel and through the presentation to be made by my colleague Nevena. Still, I think that Johan, stay with us if you can afford that. And I think that you are also able to access all these questions in case you want to reply to some of them directly in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much.
If we have time at the end of the webinar, we will still go through some of them. And without further delay, I would like to introduce my colleague Nevena Raczko. She is senior consultant at IDC, and she's the project manager of the Green Deal Data Space project. Great. And so, Nevena, you will tell us a lot of things. I think that you will resolve a lot of doubts that people have already posted in the chat and the questions and answers, especially give us the scope of the project, what will be done, how it will be done, and how people can engage in the different activities. So the floor is yours. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nuria, and thanks for this very kind presentation, and also Johan for the earlier presentation. I think it was very needed for our audience to understand the scope on what we are trying to do here. And again, thanks for everyone for joining. It's very nice to see such a huge community here. So today I will give you a short presentation about our project called GREAT, or the so-called Green Deal Data Space Foundation and its community of practice. Right now we are still at the beginning of the project, so I will really touch upon on the key objectives, what are our plans, and how you can get involved in our work. So going back to the basis, I think it's important to reflect a little bit about the concept of the data spaces. I mean, we could hear from Johan where it started, but of course, I think it's important to mention, obviously, the data strategy, because that's where the Commission presented the concept of the common European data spaces. In our case, our kind of reference point is obviously the Green Deal, the EU's flagship plan to become the first climate neutral continent in the world by 2050. And of course, when we look at the Green Deal, we cannot not think about the digital technologies and about data, because of course data is critical to help achieve the goal of the European Green Deal. And I think obviously in Europe, we need to put data and sustainability at the heart of our economy. But obviously that requires a lot of investment and a lot of new innovations. And I think that's why our projects such as the Green Deal data space is very crucial. So the implementation of the European Green Deal vision presents significant challenges, obviously due to the fact that there is a huge amount of data distributed in various resources in different types. You know, different stakeholders are owning data, different sectors are using data that are related to climate, and according to the EU data strategy, the Green Deal data space will be a common infrastructure that will allow industries, governments, and researchers to access the high quality interoperable data and related services, and give data holders and providers tools to manage, control, and provide access to their data. And our project, or the Green Deal data space, is expected to solve these problems of fragmentation and inconsistency by supporting sharing of data, so proposing solutions for that, and also respecting obviously the rights of data holders. And more generally, I think Johan also put a great emphasis on that, to respect our European values. So moving on, and just a very generic and basic information about the project. So it's a CSA, so it means it's a coordination and support action. I would like to emphasize that we are not building here a technical infrastructure. So our project is really focusing on research. The duration of the project is 18 months because we are currently in the preparatory phase of the data space. We started our work last year in September, and according to our plans, a year from now, we will be able to tell you how you can really build a Green Deal data space. And I think one of the key strengths of our project is our consortium, because I'm very proud of the group that we were able to gather together. So we have 11 partners and 3 associated partners. IDC is responsible for the project management, and EGI is the technical lead or the technical coordinator of the project. And the key strength of this consortium is that we have access to over 1,000 stakeholders and 100 initiatives, and we are linked to various sectors that are related to the Green Deal. So here we speak about atmosphere or ocean, maritime, and any other related sectors. And of course, it's also important to mention that our consortium members operate in partnership with, for instance, with Copernicus Services, with Destination Earth, or for instance, also MODNet, and they bring this expertise in federated system governance. And obviously, I could see it also in the chat, there were many questions about the other sectoral data spaces. We are also directly linked to some of the ongoing sectoral data spaces right now. So what are the overall objectives of our project, or how do we want to achieve to create the Green Deal data space, or what are the key pillars? So as a first step, it's very important in our case to establish a so-called Green Deal community of practice. We are currently in that phase where we are creating this community, and we are trying to gather more stakeholders that are already working or would like to work with data related to the EU Green Deal, and they are committed to join us, and with a common effort to create the Green Deal data space. And of course, for the Green Deal data space, it's necessary to identify what are those high priority data sets that are needed. So we are identifying the minimum set of data, and we are also creating an inventory of data sets. So this will be one of the outcomes from our project. And of course, we are following closely the announcement that was made recently regarding the Open Data Directive and the high-value data sets. So I will zoom in a little bit more on that aspect a bit later. The other step, obviously, is the blueprint. So it's very important that we enable cross-sectoral technical interoperability. Obviously, it's a big challenge, and our technical blueprint will create a Green Deal data space referent architecture that will explain how existing or planned data ecosystem at national, regional, and local level can be connected to provide an interoperable, secure data sharing environment. And in this case, obviously, we are not trying to reinvent the wheel, so to say. So our blueprint will rely heavily on the already existing examples. So of course, we are following closely, for instance, the work that has been done and that is already ongoing in the Destination Earth initiative. And as an additional pillar is, of course, the governance and business model. So I think this is maybe a unique feature in our project, or comparing to the other ongoing projects related to the Green Deal or the Green Deal data space, because of course there is another project funded by Horizon Europe that has a more technical kind of focus. But in the Green Deal data space, we are also exploring applicable governance models and also business models. So by working with different kind of stakeholders, we are analyzing what is already out there and what we think that we can implement in our project. All these key pillars that I just presented before, so the community of practice, the high priority data set, the blueprint, and the governance model, they are all bringing us to the final outcome or the final deliverable of the project, which is a roadmap. It's an implementation roadmap that will define the key milestones on how to realize the Green Deal data space. So this is something that we aim to achieve at the end of our work. And just to share with you something more concrete, and so you know when you will see something explicitly from our side. So I'm sharing here a timeline of the project. So as I said, we started in September. Right now we are at the end of our month 6, and we entered our phase 1, where we are building our community of practice. And the first round of our report will be published this year in August. So we will publish the blueprint, the governance schemes, and the prioritized data set. And of course, as all of these are bringing us to the roadmap, we will also publish the first version of the roadmap in September. So what are the key strategic actions that we are taking into account? I think most of the time when someone hears the European Green Deal, of course, thinks about various policies and sectors. And as Johan was mentioning, the Green Deal has its trans-sectoral and transversal feature. So while we were writing the proposal, we were really thinking on how we can really select some initiatives that are relevant in our work. So in the proposal phase, we selected these 3 strategic Green Deal actions. So the biodiversity strategy, the zero pollution action plan, and the climate change adaptation strategy. Simply, the choice on why we pick those 3 is simply due to the fact that they are interlinked with other strategic actions, and they represent more or less the full scope of the Green Deal data space. And they also complement sectors by being addressed by other thematic data spaces. So just to give an example, for example, industrial production and agricultural use of pesticides are key drivers of pollution, and thus they affect biodiversity. So like that, for instance, we are already connected to the chemical strategy of the EU. And each of them are looking at different kind of data. So when we look at biodiversity has more a regional aspect. So that's where, from that strategy, we can look at regional data. So when we speak about zero pollution, again, as I said, it's the zero pollution is already much more regulated than other aspects. So there we speak about chemicals, and of course the climate adaptation is spanning across all the other initiatives in the Green Deal. And I like to share this slide because I think it really shows how complex is our work and how challenging can be to look at, you know, all the different aspects of the European Green Deal. So here you can see how we see the work with the other sectoral data spaces that are already ongoing. So we have some strategic sectoral data spaces that we are following closely and trying to see, you know, how they advance with their work. They have sometimes different timeline than us, but still they have a common goal to create their data space. So obviously the agriculture has a very relevant action for us. Also the energy data space, the smart communities and the smart cities as well. But in the EU Green Deal, we cannot only look at sectoral aspects, because there is, for instance, the aspect of finance and EU taxonomy and all the obligatory reporting requirements on different activities. And I think it's also important to mention the part of the Circular Economy Action Plan, because there is an ongoing parallel action right now, and the Digital Product Passport, where the EU is creating also some sort of data inventory where we can track our products and have information about, you know, the environmental footprint of those products and how they were created. I could see that there, I think the question, and also from the comment section, there were a lot of questions on how do you work with the Data Space Support Center or the other sectoral data spaces. So here I just listed those key aspects where we really need to be aligned, because all of us, there are some aspects that are impacting the Green Deal data space, and there are some other aspects that all the rest of us needs to be on the same page. So for instance, we are working together with the Data Space Support Center to have a common understanding of the building blocks and different kind of toolboxes. Of course, we rely heavily also on the Data Space Support Center to have a guidance on the regulatory perspective, because obviously there is the Data Governance Act, there is the Data Act that we are analyzing very closely, but as all the other sectoral data spaces needs to do the same, we are working there together. And then obviously we are also aligned on the common standards and the semantics and the interoperability protocols. By joining different kind of workshops, we are also giving our feedback on how we see these activities. Again, the same for the data governance models and business models as well. And just overall, the Data Space Support Center is giving us the possibility to have discussion and engage with the other sectoral data spaces. And besides the part or the community of the common European data spaces, in our case, in the case of the GREAT project, we have some initiatives and partnerships that are highly relevant, because obviously our project is not trying to reinvent the wheel, so to say, because in these past years, and I think I could also say decade, there has been a huge work done on the aspect of sustainability and environmental observation. So I listed here some of those. I already mentioned the Destination Earth initiative through one of our partners, ECMWF. We are directly linked with them. So the Destination Earth initiative is the digital twin of our planet Earth. Then we are also directly related to EMODNet, the European Marine Observation and Data Network. Copernicus, the EU's Earth observation program is also a high priority list for us. So we are also working with them. And from the policy aspect, We are following the work of the European Environment Agency and also the JRC. And from the business perspective, we listed here some of the big cloud providers. In our project, we think it's also important to see how they are working, or what are the already existing systems in this front. So we had some interviews, for instance, with Amazon sustainability team to understand how they manage different kind of environmental related data, and to see what is the business model that they already use. And today I just wanted to zoom in to two aspects, and then I think I will give the floor already to Veronica to start with the panel, but just very quickly, on the high value data set. So the Commission published recently the high value data set where there were the categories published. So of course, here we have the Earth observation and environment. We have the meteorological data and also the geospatial and statistical data. Our project is obviously analyzing these categories, and we are reflecting on this data that on this list that has been published from the Commission. But it's important that we are not going to limit ourselves only to the high value data sets. We will also try to have a step beyond and understand what other data sets can be relevant for the Green Deal data space. And then the other item that I wanted to mention today is the community of practice. So as I said, our goal is to create a Green Deal data space community of practice, which is a huge task, obviously, due to the fact of the Green Deal covering so many sectors. And right now we are in that phase where we are trying to get more people on board. So also, if you are here today and you would like to get in touch with us, please do so, because we have our doors open, so to say. And on this slide, you can see just an initial mapping of stakeholders that we performed at the beginning of the project. And our objective was to identify different communities and relevant stakeholders that can be brought to our work by the members of our consortium. And this is not the final mapping, of course. This is just a start. So we are open to expand a little bit more and also cover different aspects related to the Green Deal. And how you can join or who can contribute to our work. We have launched the call for use cases and also for the community engagement. So basically, if you are working with data related to the EU Green Deal or to generically to sustainability, you can join our work by filling out an application form that you can find on our website. It's very easy to remember the website because it's called greatproject.eu, and then under the open calls you will see a form. I think maybe I included it in my slide. So if you would like to get involved, there's a very simple form to fill out. I think it would take less than 2 seconds from your time. And once filling out the form, our team will get in touch with you and let you know how you can work with us or which kind of different working groups you could join. And with that, I think I'm ending my presentations. In case you would like to be up to date about the project and how our activities are going, please follow us on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. And we are also sharing the latest updates on our website. And please subscribe to our newsletter, because we will send newsletters with the latest updates from the project, and also if there is any event, we will share it there. So, and yes, and here is our email address. Of course, you can send directly questions to our email address at info@greatproject.eu.
Thank you very much, Nevena. I think that you have provided a very comprehensive overview of the project, the areas where the project is working, some of the expected results. I saw a lot of interesting comments in the chat, so I really encourage people still to share those ones because that will be very useful for us to shape the next webinars. And without further delay, I would like to invite Veronica already to introduce the panelists and go deeper into some of these discussions. So Veronica, the floor is yours. I know that we don't have a lot of time now, but let's see what we do with this time that we have.
Yes, we'll focus on the important aspects. So thank you very much, Nuria, for that. And thank you, panelists, for joining me today. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for joining us. So today we have 3 speakers on our panel with whom we'll discuss what it means for them to actually be a part of data space. What are their concerns? And how they foresee to be a part of the Green Deal data space, which we're focusing on today. Let me first shortly introduce our speakers, and then of course I will give you guys the floor to say hello from your side. We have with us Agnieszka Łukaszczyk, who is the Vice President for Government Affairs at Planet, and also we also have Agnieszka with us today because she is also a chair of Earth Green Deal Working Group. Hello, Agnieszka. We have also with us Nicola Piron, who is the research director at the National Research Council of Italy and also an expert for environmental research and policy. So hello, Nicola, thank you very much for joining us. And we also have with us Dr. Nico Vanders from University of Utrecht, who is a hydrologist as well and an expert on drought, floods, and the impact of climate change on these two. So thank you very much for joining us again. And I would like now to give you just, of course, you can give a short intro apart from what I said, and mostly to say just a short sentence for our audience about your organization. So also for us to have it clear in terms of the panel, which sector and what type of entity are you representing. Agnieszka, would you like to start?
Sure, of course. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and talk a little bit about what we're doing at ERSC with the working group on the European Green Deal and also kind of Planet's involvement. So Planet is not involved in a great initiative, so perhaps I should say that. But it is going to impact companies like Planet for sure, and it is something that we are observing with a great interest and a great and with a great detail. We, as said by the speaker from the Commission, European Green Deal is the one of the main priorities of the current Commission. But it really should be a priority for all of us because it is something that is simply essential for the world. We need to take care of this planet, and I don't mean Planet the company, I mean planet Earth. So these initiatives are extremely, extremely important, and none of them can happen without various sources of data. We have the saying at Planet that we say, you can't fix what you can't see, and you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And in order to measure things, we need various data sources. And we're not just talking here about Earth observation, but variety of data sources. So that's why initiatives like the Destination Earth and Digital Twin Earths and all of these things are extremely important. At ERSC, we have identified already over a year ago that ERSC as an association needs to engage with this topic of the European Green Deal on various levels, that we, as an association, we have a role to play. Our members have a big role to play, and they can really have an impact. So what we have done, we have started this working group, and we have divided it into, there are 3 different subgroups that we're looking at, and those subgroups are evolving based on the needs of let's say the European Green Deal and what is happening on the council level and the Commission level and the European Parliament's level. And what we're trying to do, we are trying to really influence the upcoming legislations. The latest one has been the forest legislation, but we're also looking at the nature restoration law. We're looking at various legislation to make sure that data is actually mention those legislations. I mean, we're particularly in the scope of Earth, particularly interested in Earth observation data, but we want to make sure that Earth observation data is part of the language of the legislation. So it becomes a recognizable tool that is something that is just going to be kind of an obvious part of the solution. And we've been quite successful, actually. We've been able to introduce amendments into various legislations, and we continue to do so. So, we are we're very engaged in these topics. The GREAT initiative is something that is going to be extremely important to build this ecosystem of data providers, where we can all contribute, and all contribute in a very efficient and smart way. It is the open data sources is something that, for instance, at Planet, we are very keen to participate in. Obviously, we do sell our data because we're a business, but we are selling it in such a way that that it can eventually become a part of the open source community. So without further ado, I'm actually here to learn from those who are actually participating in the initiative, and then see how we, from ERSC and from the working group on the European Green Deal, but also from Planet, how we can engage and how we can support. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka, for this introduction. Indeed, we'll get back to your perspective also as a data provider and stakeholders for whom data spaces as such will play a significant role as well. But as you mentioned as well, within the scope of Green Deal, but also other legislation, we will need the data to measure the impact and to monitor many of the aspects, especially related to our environment. And here I would like to go then to Nicola, because you were a part of, you were involved in the creation of the Minamata Convention, and maybe that will be also a good introduction to good transition to start your introduction. And how do you then see Green Deal and the impact of such data spaces for you as CNR, but also maybe from the Minamata Convention perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. I apologize in advance because my voice this morning is terrible. I got bad flu, so I will do my best. Yeah, I prepared a few slides. I don't know if that is the right time to fire up these slides now, but as introductory remark, first of all, I'd like to thank Veronica and all the great team for inviting us to contribute to this very interesting project, coordinating action. Well, in the last 25 years, I've been hearing a lot about data of all kinds, and all the issues related to data sharing. Personally, and with my group and my institute, we are involved since 15 years now in the group on Earth observation. That is one of these intergovernmental program promoting data sharing and sharing of tools to gain knowledge from large data set, and to empower our capacity to extract the necessary information and guidance from all these huge data set that coming from different sensors, that environmental sensor for environmental quality, but also socioeconomic sensors. So the challenge is how we lump together all this data. So in the last few years, we have been involved at different levels of database curation, creation, and now we talk about data space. So the future challenge in Horizon Europe, and I'm glad to hear that the Commission is putting a lot of effort in this to coordinate the space of data spaces. So we will have a number of data spaces in different domain of application. That is not only data. When we talk about data space, in my opinion, and in the way we see it, we talk about also tools to exploit this data that are coming, as I said, from different sources and sensors of different quality. So we have to be careful to avoid putting together pears and apples. So all the issues related to the control check of data quality is very important, especially when you use data and tools, sorry, for supporting the implementation of environmental policy and identify cost-effective strategy that member states and countries in general may undertake to meet the goal of a different strategy. And to become carbon neutral by 2050, you need to implement a certain strategy in energy production and use and in many industrial and commercial sector. So this we need to develop tools that can support third parties and government to choose the best available strategy and cost effective in order to achieve this really very ambitious goal. So perhaps later, I don't know when, I can show you an example how to lump together data and tools to support policy. So up to you, Veronica.
Yes, thank you very much, Nicola. We'll move to that in a second. I will just finish the round of introduction. So thank you very much, Nicola. And yes, now last but not least, of course, I would like to move to you, Nicola, because of course, I think as you are more in this part of climate change and its impact on for instance, floods and droughts, I was wondering, as this is the core of Green Deal in a way, of course, climate change and impact and measurement of that. How is the situation for you and for the world of maybe more from the perspective of hydrology domain? What would such initiatives, such data spaces, what it means for you?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, so where we are, I always say we're the middleman, kind of. We're taking a lot of data from meteorology, Earth observation, remote sensing, census data. We transform that. We give the extra at the value of hydrological knowledge, how the water flows, where it flows, how long it takes, and as you mentioned already, droughts and floods, where they occur, and also try to forecast those, for example, in real time, using all those data sources. Taking up all those data sources in real time and seeing what is our outlook for the coming week, months, and if we talk about climate change, decades to come. And then as such, we also output data. And that's why I say we're the middleman. We're translating all that other information with our hydrological knowledge into other new data products that give input on hydrological sciences like soil moisture, groundwater, how much water is flowing in rivers, but also information, of course, on water temperature, water quality, and outputting that to policymakers like WRI, the European Union. We're collaborating with ECM. We have parties like that take our data and then bring it into the next level, or even other scientists that, for example, need water temperature information and water availability information to say something about the potential for agriculture, the potential for energy sources and stuff like that. So that's why I always like to think of us as the middleman that adds value to the raw data that maybe comes from remote sensing or more raw data, and then bring it also to the next, let's provide added value to that. And that's something our group has been working on for a number of years already, quite successfully. And it's also a challenge because all those data sources come from different sources. We have people here only working at making sure that we have the right data in the right formats that can be ingested into our modeling efforts. And it's not just us, there's more hydrologists around the world, of course, and also they collaborate in multi-team efforts to see and to provide that information. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much for that, Nico. Actually, I think these are also the questions we'll be answering in creation of data spaces. Exactly like how to get the data from different sources in different formats. So thank you very much for starting with that. And here now I would like to get back a little bit to what Nevena presented and a little bit to the idea of GREAT and how we interact with you in the audience, but also with our two representatives of use cases we have on the panel and what are the use cases. So as Nevena mentioned before, we are looking for examples of how you work with data to support the implementation of Green Deal and to discuss with you what are your needs and challenges you're facing so that we can all meet together, brainstorm, discuss with our experts from the GREAT project how we can proceed and how we can build the future data space to meet your requirements. So that's why it's super important to have you guys on board. So with that, I would like to go back to Nicola and invite you. I think now is the right time to share your slides and give us a short introduction of your use case. We invited to be a part of the great project and with whom we'll be working throughout the upcoming months to identify the data needs, gaps, and challenges you're facing.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so as I said, this is an example on how to use data and models in a given workflow to support policy implementation. This is the case of the Global Observation System for Mercury Knowledge Hub that is meant to support the implementation of the Minamata Convention. This is part of, this is a flagship in the group of Earth observation that was started a few years ago. And so is a way to show how to co-design policy scenario on the basis of current data and knowledge that and how to support decision makers. What is the most cost-effective strategy to achieve the goal of reducing, in this case, mercury pollution and impact on human health. So let's see. So you can find all the details at this URL address for this flagship. And so the conceptual framework for this knowledge hub, we start from is a co-design approach with the policymakers and stakeholders. So you co-design the policy scenario that you want to evaluate. In doing this, you are driven by a number of policy relevant questions. For example, how much I should reduce emission to the atmosphere in order to achieve a goal of reducing mercury bioaccumulation in marine food web. And then, of course, to achieve the reduction of human exposure through diet, and so the risk evaluation. So in doing this, of course, you have to use a different type of Earth observation data sets. And then you evaluate, you do the assessment of different policy scenarios. So what type of data set, what type of data we use for this? So we have from different sensor, from satellite sensor, from aircraft-based sensor for different measurements that you can do in the troposphere and the free stratosphere, from different marine buoy and oceanographic cruise, from in situ monitoring network. So all kinds of data, including socioeconomic data. So what happens to this data? Of course, you have to go through different pre-processing tasks in order to prepare the data as input to modeling evaluation. Models can be numerical model for global scale assessment, for regional scale assessment, to downscaling to local scale assessment, and also to model the interaction between different environmental compartments. So how pollutant can be transferred from atmosphere to the ocean, from the ocean to marine sediment or to marine biota, and how this can impact on human health or the quality of ecosystem. So there are a number of international protocols, not only the Minamata Convention, but a number of protocols on marine quality and so forth. So air quality as well for atmospheric pollution. So you go through a number of modeling activity, and with this huge data set now in the last few years, we are using, in addition to numerical modeling, also a lot of artificial intelligence algorithm in order to exploit and to extract a lot of information from this huge data set. And then, of course, you feed a chain of models for ecosystem modeling that can be, as soon as you evaluate the transfer of a pollutant, in this case mercury, but the same applies for persistent organic pollutant, for example, to marine ecosystem or terrestrial ecosystem, and then you have to deal with the cycling of this pollutant in the global environment. So you start working on this marine biogeochemical model. So you need a lot of data feeding this model of all kinds. And then you work with a trophic transfer model. So how much of this pollutant can go into the different trophic level, and finally, how this marine biota can impact on human health. So this has been the work that we have been doing in the last few years in different European projects, among others, Era Planet, E-Shape project, and many others that, so we have been collaborating with many partners in Europe. And so this is an example that you can play with this knowledge hub. Is available on the web, so you can really play with this. So you have this, the region of the world with a given emission profile, so you can change emission from different countries. This is just an example. You can perturbate emission profile of different countries. And for example, if we reduce by 50% emission from Europe, North America, and East Asia, what happens in terms of deposition of this pollutant to ecosystem? So here you get deposition changes for different regions, different sea, and you get all the information for different scenario that you can evaluate. And also you get also an estimate of the quality of your assessment. So if the reduction is significant, and what is the reduction for each region. So you can do all kinds of evaluation. And so that has been designed, this knowledge hub, in order to allow non-scientists, so non-scientific experts, to evaluate different scenarios at the country level and also by technological sector. And so one thing that came out during our work, that one of the information that is required for each cost-effective strategy is how much would it cost. So what is the cost related to the best available technology implementation in order to reduce the impact of a given activity, of a given emission of a pollutant on the global environment. So we have been working on this using the available data on the cost of this technology. This report is a little bit outdated. A European report is 10 years back. So we are looking for most updated data on technological, different technological sector in order to estimate how much would cost to reduce pollutant emission to the atmosphere from different industrial sector and commercial sector. So, but what comes out from this cost model? So you start from a unit cost for different reduction strategy that can be low, medium, and high. And so what you get for each sector, a table like this. So you get what would be the cost for emission reduction in terms of emission, we talk in terms of tons of pollutant released to the atmosphere from different sectors. That can be, chlor-alkali production or coal-fired power plant, and the cement production, for example. And so this allows you to do some projection of different scenarios of emission reduction. And so our goal is to provide plots like this, where you have cost of a different technology with emission reductions, efficiency in percentage, and what would be the reduction of the position of this pollutant to the ocean, for example, in this case. And so to fix the target in terms of achievement of reduction, and how much would this cost. After this, you get the cost-effective strategy, also with information with the cost, and how much you should reduce in terms of emission in different sectors, industrial sector. Then our goal is to provide, we are working on this, a new module in this knowledge hub that would estimate the human exposure and would assess the risk associated to different population groups in different regions of the world, from diet and also from air quality, because in different places of the world, for example, small-scale gold mining that they use mercury for extracting this gold, they get impacted directly through inhalation, which is quite a big impact from human health. So that is our pilot, and similarly to this, we have ongoing pilot like this for air quality and impact on human exposure in urban area. But another important initiative that we will start working in this integrated knowledge hub will be in the framework of the future activity of the partnership of agricultural data. That is a new partnership that is starting now, and so will keep us busy in the next 7 years to go. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. And indeed, I think you tackled upon an important part of all of it, which is also, I think, was mentioned somewhere among the questions coming from the audience, because of course the aspect of cost is super important in such initiatives. But before I go to the business part and the cost part, I would like now to invite Nico to share a few words about your use case and the use case coming from the University of Utrecht on global hydrology modeling.
Cool, I'll keep it brief, and here we go. So I just wanted to show basically the complications of whatever goes into such a modeling effort as we do, and why I feel that this great project could actually help us in the future. I simplified hydrological model just by a circle, but it's thousands and thousands of lines of code. But what you get into it is things like precipitation, temperature, and evaporation, which are all coming from meteorological services. So in that sense, they're all a standard format. But it becomes more difficult because if we talk about how water droplets move, we need to know how the land, what kind of land use is, and you already see that there's a different data type coming into that. We need to know what kind of soil types we have, different community, different features. And geology, again, something different, a different community that we're reaching out to. Vegetation, I'm not a vegetation expert, but we can take that from remote sensing. And also we need to have that information to know how the water flows, because where plants grow, they evaporate water. Elevation, that's relatively straightforward, but still another data source. Lakes and reservoirs, and now it becomes more complicated, more human oriented. Where are the lakes, the reservoirs, and also how are they managed? Where do people irrigate? How much water do we irrigate? We know this for Europe quite a bit. We have a lot of that information, but not all of it. And I know that from remote sensing, people are estimating this, but also from census data, we need to know roughly where people are, how the water is used, what people use water for. Again, this is more census type of data information that we need to know, because if water droplets are on the ground and they're used for drinking water, then they take a different route. Groundwater pumping, where do people pump groundwater, where they take surface water, and where do people live? I mean, maybe that's the easiest one. But still, that's also important to know how water flows. And then I already briefly mentioned kind of the output products that we can get out of that. And that's, in our terms, mostly gridded products. But and this information is then should also be, and I think that's key, what we can do here in this data space as well, interoperable for the people that we want to use afterwards, because we provide all those nice global maps in our case. But a lot of people want to know what's happening in their backyard, in their province, in their nuts area or whatever, and they don't necessarily care about large parts of the world, let alone if your bandwidth is significantly smaller. We see users from Africa, for example, they often want to have a downsized version of whatever we do to be able to take the data there and use the data there, because we provide the information that is useful for them, which is always encouraging to see. So I like to keep it at that in the interest of time, but so you get a short sense of what we do.
Thank you very much. But it also emphasized, I think, the importance for you to use diverse sources and then combining different sources of data. So thank you very much for that. And now I'm thinking, because both from CNR perspective and University of Utrecht, this is more, if I may say, more research part, of course. And I'm wondering, Agnieszka, what do you think? What would be then the implications of for instance, Green Deal data space for more private sector, and for instance, entities like Planet?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it is still to be seen, but I think it's the mindsets are changing of data providers, of commercial data providers, hopefully. So definitely with these new space movement that we consider ourselves to be part of, we are very keen to see this open data sharing and open data platforms, and combining data fusion also. So being part of an ecosystem of various data sources are being fused together and offering potential solutions. Now, we have to do it in a smart way so that commercial companies don't go out of business, because obviously we cannot give everything for free. Space, especially in Earth observation, this is an expensive business. But we are Planet, as you probably know, it's a mission-driven company. So we have been created to really use this Earth observation data to help life on Earth. And we have joined the stock exchange market, the New York Stock Exchange market, a year and a half ago as a public benefit corporation. There are like literally only 10 companies in the world total, not like any sort of companies that have done that, because it's a very difficult kind of it's a difficult place to be in, because we as a public benefit corporation are not just responsible to our shareholders with our revenues and profits, so our shares go up, but we're also mainly responsible to stick to our mission. So for instance, sometimes we have to make a very difficult business decisions where, for instance, we have a good business opportunity, but if we don't think it's fostering the mission to help life on Earth, it's not fostering the kind of being a good actor, then we're going to turn that business opportunity away. So we're not just going to do business for money. And that kind of helps into this environment of open data, right? Because this is, like I said, you can't manage what you can't measure. And for European Green Deal, it's great that there are all these priorities, but how do we know we're progressing, right? How do we know where we are in these priorities? We have to track those. We have to monitor those. We have to measure those. And this is where data is coming. So we have to build an ecosystem where different data providers and different downstream players can work together to make sure that this progress is being done, and to offer information. And what we call is offer this kind of transparent planet. You know, we need to have a transparent view of what is happening on Earth in order to make informed decisions. So, but like I said, it has to be done in a smart way. So there is a big role to play by governments and European Commission, for instance, and European Space Agency, and these big public bodies that can assure that commercial sector does not go out of business while it contributes to the overall ecosystem. And the one way forward is, we've been doing this actually with a couple of governments already, is where a government, for instance, purchases a bulk of data, or what we call it on a flat rate. So instead of buying, for this project, for that project, they buy a data, for instance, let's say for European, you can call it, there's a big procurement for European Green Deal. A government pays for it once, and then that data is available for free in an open source way to scientists and to academia and to those that are working on these priorities. So there is a way to include data providers where they can contribute and not, because otherwise it's not going to work. Nothing is ever free, right, in the world. I mean, somebody always has to pay for something, but we can do it in such a way that that data becomes an open source data, but the cost is covered by the public sector.
Perfect. I think this is great input for our research we do in GREAT, which is like the business models and how do we approach exactly this issue. So thank you very much for sharing that. And of course, we'll have further discussions about what are the options and what, for instance, private sector representatives consider how to share their data. Unfortunately, I see that we're running out of time, but I would like to get back shortly to Nicola before we close, because we were discussing a little bit before the whole webinar started. Like, what do you think are the, from your perspective, from CNR perspective, but also maybe your more personal ones? What do you think we should bear in mind, and what are the challenges we need to make sure to tackle within the Green Deal data space?
Yeah, that's a bigger question, but we have a couple of issues that we have to keep in mind. And one is certainly to coordinate this new effort in creating different data spaces in different domains of application, which is very good. But in order to making sure that we are able to use all this, this effort is profitable, we need to coordinate in somehow the effort. But another important question is when we talk about open data, there are different level of openness of data, because as we know, there are very relevant and sensitive data for industrial production, social data in terms of privacy, and so it's the field is very complex. And a European Union, we don't have a big company that can compete in the world market, in the global market. So we have to be careful also to prepare ourselves to compete in the global market for the use of this data. And because it's not always the same approach that other countries outside of Europe have. So a European Union has been leading, pushing for this in the last decade, but we need a business model. So we need to develop the right business model, the right governance for ensuring that all the rights are preserved and all interests are preserved. So it's very important the involvement of stakeholders, different actors in this big puzzle that we are going to build. So the competition is very strong. So we have to be prepared to face the strong competition from outside of Europe.
Great, thank you very much. With that, unfortunately, we need to close our discussion panel. I'm so sorry we didn't manage to address all the questions we wanted to address. However, this is just just a comma, it's not a period. We'll meet again for sure with our use cases, but it's also for our audience that we will have more meetings and workshops with stakeholders. So please follow us on social media, and the Get Involved form was shared through the chat. And now I will thank you once again to all our panelists. And now I will pass it to Nuria to address all the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Very interesting discussion. Thanks a lot to all the panelists. I like it because normally we always start talking about technical challenges, technical interoperability, things like that. Finally, when you present the use cases, we realize that we really need to cover the impact, what is the effect of data availability and data consumption on the different domains and applications, and also business models, which is something that has been discussed widely in the chat. For data providers, for data intermediaries, companies that may develop services on top of this data, and also for data users. All this leading to quite a lot of challenges looking at governance of the data space. So I think that these are all challenges that GREAT is looking at, and we will provide more information about all these things in future webinars and future workshops and encounters. I would like to mention that the GREAT project will be present at the Data Spaces Symposium in the Netherlands from the 21st to the 23rd of March. So we invite all of you to come there and listen to the future things that we will provide. And maybe just before closing the webinar, I would like to invite my colleague Nevena, as manager of GREAT, maybe to say a few words about what's coming next, and maybe invite the people again to follow us on the website and our social media.
Yes, hi Nuria, can you see me, hear me?
We hear you and we see you. Okay,
perfect. So as you mentioned, and also Veronica said, please just follow our website and social media. We will share more information about upcoming events and opportunities to work with us. We will be present at this bigger symposium in the Netherlands, and then also our colleagues are joining the EGU at the end of April, where we will run different kind of sessions. And after that, towards the beginning of the summer, we will have a bigger event. So stay tuned. Right now, I cannot share more details, unfortunately, but we will make sure to share it on our social media profiles.
So thank you very much, Nevena. Thanks also all the attendees for staying here with us, for all the comments that you have posted in the chat, And I wish you all a very nice day. Stay tuned about the project, and thanks again for your participation, the panelists, the European Commission, my colleague Nevena, the colleagues from the Great Project for supporting in the discussion. So again, I wish you all a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nuria.
Have
Thank
a
you,
nice
everyone.
day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Keep in touch.